The non-tender deadline came and went, and all the Rangers that started on the roster on Friday are still here. Plus, the Rangers constructing their bullpen in 2025 just got a little bit harder with some injury news. Talk about all that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers. This is the first and best daily Texas Rangers podcast. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before we talk about Dane Dunning coming back on a pay cut, Josh Sborz undergoing surgery, and the first big free agent domino to fall, and how that affects Nathan Eovaldi possibly coming back to the Rangers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Now, the Rangers faced the non-tender deadline on Friday evening, and there was some concern, at least among me, and I'm sure plenty of other Rangers fans, that the Rangers might end up cutting ties with Dane Dunning, or maybe even Leody Taveras, or if you're feeling even more extreme, maybe even Nathaniel Lowe or Jonah Heim after this non-tender deadline. But the deadline came and went, and all the Rangers that started on the roster on Friday are still there. Dane Dunning was tendered a contract. He was projected to make somewhere around $4-ish million, maybe a little bit more, depending on which arbitration projection you looked at. One of them had him at around $5 million. And after coming off of a terrible season, I thought, okay, well, Dunning is important to this roster in 2025, but he's not $4 or $5 million important to the Rangers roster in 2025. But the Rangers and Dane Dunning's agent worked out an agreement. He is making $2.66 million with some incentives that have not been announced yet. It's unclear what those incentives are or how much Dane Dunning's deal could end up going up to. But what is clear is that this number is less than Dunning made in 2024. And that's not something that happens often. Almost always in arbitration, you make more. Every year, you make more, usually pretty significantly more than the year you did what you made the year before. But with Dunning coming off of a career worst year, he'd been a solid back-end rotation starter for the Rangers for several years leading into 2023, where he had the season of his life, truly a fantastic season. The Rangers needed every single bit of what Dane Dunning gave them in 2023, or they would not have made the playoffs, let alone won the World Series. And so Dane Dunning got a bit of a pay bump in 2024. And he had an awful season, just a truly awful season, not just marred by injuries, but towards the end of the year, the Rangers just straight up sent him down to the minors. And I think what this deal is showing, because this is the maximum amount allowable of a pay cut, 20% less than the year before at 2.66. He made $3.3-ish million last year, but this is the max pay cut allowed. This is kind of a sign of Dane Dunning's agent reading the market and saying, hey, I know this wasn't a great year, and if I don't want my client to get non-tendered, he likes being here. The Rangers like having him around. He is probably the Rangers' 6th, 7th starter or so, probably their long man in the pen at the beginning of the season, depending on how different things shake out. I'm pretty sure that's about where Dunning will end up in this roster, and those guys are important. You need guys who can come in there if you have an injury to your starting rotation and can give you a passable start, 5 innings, 3, maybe 4 runs, and save your bullpen. Or just guys that can come in if a starter gets injured in a game, or if you just a starter just getting clobbered. You need someone to come in there and eat those innings and give your team a chance to come back in games. That's Dane Dunning's sweet spot. That's what I think he's best at. And while I don't think he's going to have a 3.5-ish ERA or in 170 innings or whatever he did exactly in 2023, again, that was probably the outlier. He's still a valuable piece to this pen, and the Rangers keeping him around at $2.66 million is a good sign for this team and a good sign for what they're doing in general. They also avoided arbitration with Josh Sborz, a $1.1 million deal. There are also some incentives for Sborz, but the Rangers got some really bad news this weekend about Sborz. He underwent a procedure on his right shoulder debridement. I've never seen that word before in my life, but basically it's the shoulder issue that Sborz was dealing with all year long. I mean, 4 different stints on the IL in 2024. And this is a big blow for the Rangers. I mean, the Rangers lost their 3 top late relief options, leverage relief options in free agency. They might come back. 1 or 2 of them might come back in Yates and Robertson and Jose Leclerc. But Sborz was supposed to be up there among those options. And now with this surgery, he's going to miss the first 2 to 3 months of the season. So the Rangers now have a lot of high leverage spots to fill. They can't do it all through free agency, but they're going to be a lot more aggressive in free agency with this bullpen than I think we initially thought. I was hoping that Josh Sborz would come back and we'd be closer to the October 2023 Josh Sborz than the regular season 2023 Josh Sborz. I mean, heck, in the regular season this year, even when he was coming back and dealing with some of that dead shoulder fatigue, whatever is how he called it, he was still an effective pitcher in late relief. And Sborz was an important part of this pen heading into 2025. Of the guys on this roster, if the Rangers made no moves in free agency, no signings of relievers in free agency, it was set up pretty clearly that Sborz was going to be the Rangers closer, and there was not a whole lot behind him. Now, with the guys on this roster, if the Rangers head into opening day without signing any bullpen arms, which, again, I don't think is going to be the case, but if the Rangers don't, right now as it sits on this roster, Jacob Latz is your closer. Unless you feel better about Grant Anderson or Matt Festa or maybe Walter Pennington, either way, those names aren't inspiring a whole lot of confidence. And so the Rangers are going to have to be a lot more aggressive in free agency with their bullpen. I think bringing back Kirby Yates just got way, way, way more important. Heck, maybe even bringing back Jose Leclerc got more important, or just signing some bodies in general that are hopefully going to be good and hopefully going to be effective and hopefully not too incredibly expensive. But maybe this makes the Rangers think about bringing back David Robertson a little bit more seriously. I think Robertson's going to make quite a bit of money. I think more than Kirby Yates is going to make. I think he's definitely going to make more than Jose Leclerc is going to make. Robertson might be one of the higher paid bullpen arms this offseason because Robertson has been so dang consistent, and that kind of pushes that price range into the 10, 12, maybe $13 million per year that I think Robertson will likely make. I think it'll make the Rangers think a lot more closely about that. But looking at what else the Rangers did with those guys who were up for arbitration, there are now 3 arbitration eligible players on the Rangers that they did not agree to a deal before the arbitration deadline. Nathaniel Lowe, Jonah Heim, and Leody Taveras. Now, they can still end up hammering out a deal before it goes to the arbitration hearings, which I believe are sometime in February. The Rangers still have plenty of time, but they tendered contracts to all these guys. Jonah Heim, Leody Taveras, Nathaniel Lowe. They're all going to be on the Rangers roster come 2025. And that's a good sign for Texas. Now, Taveras is projected to make $4.3 million according to MLB trade rumors. Heim $4.8 million and Lowe $10.7. That 10.7 number is the same as it is on Spotrac. So I'm feeling like 10.7 is pretty much going to be that number with Lowe. I'm not sure if Lowe is going to be asking for more than that, and the Rangers are going to be asking below that. But just arbitration, brush up for those of you who are forgetting exactly how the process goes. Basically, if it gets to the arbitration hearings, the Rangers can still negotiate a deal, whether they want to buy out some of those free agent or some of those other years in arbitration, like they did with Adolis Garcia. So thankfully, they don't have to go through that process again with Adolis this year. They can do that. They can do that all the way up to those deadlines. But basically, it means the Rangers aren't just going to straight up cut bait with Leody Taveras or Dane Dunning. And that's a great sign that they are going to be willing to spend this offseason. Now, I still think they are very, very intent on not going into the luxury tax. I think that's still going to be very, very important to this team of resetting that luxury tax, getting back under there. So maybe in 2026, they can head back into it, be first time payers of that tax and spend less money on what it costs to be in the luxury tax if all of that TV stuff goes about how they're expecting to. But the first big domino has already fallen in free agency. A starting pitcher signing a 3-year deal that I did not think was going to get a 3-year deal. We're talking about how that affects the Rangers and how they're going to get back Nathan Eovaldi right after this. This show is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off site-wide during their cyber sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. With 5 generations of experience, Omaha Steaks consistently delivers the world's best steak experience, and their gifting experts have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide during a cyber sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code MLB and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. Minimum purchases apply. Now, the Rangers tendering contracts to all these players is such a good sign for Texas. I still think they're going to be, middling players. I think that if they sign Juan Soto, that's probably going to be the only thing they do. And especially with this Josh Sborz injury, obviously the Rangers have work to do elsewhere on their pen, other priorities, like maybe adding a starting pitcher, including mainly focused on, I would say, either, Roki Sasaki, which would be amazing and would not affect the budget all that much. But I think bringing back Nathan Eovaldi is so incredibly important and showing that this team is willing to do what it takes, willing to not try and save $4 or $5 million on players that can be very helpful, useful players, or at least not just straight up cutting bait with them. With Leody, I thought there was a little bit of a risk there. The Rangers still might end up shipping off Leody Taveras in a trade package, or the Rangers might end up saying, we feel confident that last year was just an aberration for Leody. We think he's closer to the player he was in 2023. And I think that would make a lot of sense for them to kind of bank on a bounce back year, like they're banking on bounce back years for basically everybody in this entire lineup. But I still would not be shocked if the Rangers ended up shipping off Leody even this winter, even though it would definitely be selling very, very low on a guy who's got the upside to be an everyday, starting center fielder on a World Series championship caliber team, because he's already done it once before. But the market is being set. I'm surprised at this news that I got right before I sat down to start planning the episode from John Heyman breaking this out. Yusei Kikuchi, the left-handed starting pitcher who has been with the Mariners, with the Blue Jays, and then was traded for this trade deadline by the Astros in a package that was pretty darn expensive, a little bit more expensive than I anticipated. But Kikuchi is going to play for his third different AL West teams. No, it is not the Texas Rangers. It is the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, signing him to a 3-year, $63 million deal. Now, Kikuchi is coming off of was a mediocre to kind of not great first half of 2024. And then when the Astros traded for him, from that point on, he was just straight up fantastic for them. Did not end up getting to start in a playoff game for the Astros, even though they traded 2 top 10 prospects for a rental, which was very, very surprising for me. And I think for a lot of people looking at what happened, but with what he did with Houston, I mean, he was incredible in 10 starts for the Astros, and averaging 6 innings per start, 11 and a half strikeouts per 9, and not walking guys, not giving up home runs. He was legitimately very, very good for the Astros. It's probably the best stretch of baseball that he's played. He had a good first half pre-All-Star break with the Seattle Mariners on his first contract. That was back in 2021. His age 30 season, he was an All-Star that year. And then in the second half, just completely fell apart. He has been very, very durable and consistent, which is why I think he was able to land a 3-year deal. Although, according to Spotrac, which their numbers might be way, way off, they projected him for a 1-year, $14.9 million deal. And he ended up getting more than that AAV and also 3 years. It wasn't just them that didn't think that he was going to get this kind of a deal. I believe it was The Athletic that projected around, 10 for 2 years for him. They had him ranked as their 30th best pitcher on the market. Yeah, 2 years, 3 years, 42 million, which is what, $14 million average annual value, I think. Yes, 14 million. And he got 50% more than that. This is a big deal. This is setting the market. This is the biggest free agent to sign so far this winter. And the thing about it that matters the most, especially as the Rangers are concerned, is not really how it affects the Angels and how they're going to compete. This is a little surprising seeing them, actually go for it to this degree. But again, the Angels spending patterns has always been kind of confusing with the guys that they get. Tyler Anderson signed to a big deal. Was it last offseason, maybe the offseason before that? I mean, signing a free agent right-handed reliever whose name I'm blanking on that immediately blew out and had to get Tommy John surgery, to a 3-year deal they signed last year. I believe it was Robert Stevenson, the name that I'm thinking of. But 3 years for Kikuchi, who is 33 years old, 33 years and 170 days old as of today. So he's going to be going into his age 34 season next year. But this kind of sets that market of around $21 million. There are a bunch of free agent pitchers that I think will be better than Kikuchi, that this kind of shows, okay, wow, it's going to be an expensive offseason for starting pitching. And I think Kikuchi, this is really confusing, this deal. I think the fact that he even signed this early, kind of setting a tone of, okay, wow, I guess maybe he thought this is going to be the best deal for him. And if this kind of deal was available to him, a guy who has never really shown that kind of star potential. I mean, he's been incredibly durable. That's been the greatest feather in his cap, if you will. He's been completely healthy since he got to the major leagues in 2019. He made 32 starts in 2019, made 9 starts in the COVID-shortened 2020 season, made 29 starts in 2021, lost his spot in the rotation in 2022 with Toronto at an ERA north of 5, but 32 starts last year, 32 starts the year before that. He has been an incredibly durable pitcher. And if he's got that kind of an upside that the Astros just figured out, hey, throw your slider a lot more, that was basically the main tweak from him in Toronto being a 4.75 ERA pitcher to a 2.70 ERA pitcher in 10 starts with the Astros. It was night and day difference. It was why it was so confusing, because he wasn't that good in Toronto. He wasn't that good. He'd shown upside. He had decent strikeout numbers for most of his career. I mean, 9.3 Ks per 9 in 6 years in the big leagues. It's fine. It's nothing spectacular. And being durable is incredibly valuable. The Angels are needing that because they let go of 2 of their young starting pitchers. We'll talk a little bit about that more on tomorrow's episode, where I look at non-tendered players that will be fits on the Rangers. But 3 years and $21 million average annual value, that floor. There are a lot of starting pitchers that I think are better than that, including Nathan Eovaldi. I'm looking at what some different organizations, outlets ranked in terms of their free agent starting pitchers, and why I think this means that Nathan Eovaldi, to bring him back to Texas, the Rangers might just have to pony up and add a 3rd year. Why I'm going to talk about if that's valuable, if that's worth it or not, right after this. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. If you're watching the Cowboys this Thanksgiving and you wanted to, put a little bit more action, a little bit more skin in the game while you're watching on this Turkey Day, you can go check out all the different odds they have for those Thanksgiving games. Or if you wanted to put some action on the Mavs winning it all or the Stars winning it all, they got all kinds of different ways to get in on the action. Just go to FanDuel.com to join the day. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now, I think that Nathan Eovaldi is a better free agent, a more valuable free agent than Yusei Kikuchi. I think Kikuchi, being that durable kind of a guy, showing that upside in those 10 starts down the stretch with Houston and, being left-handed, that's obviously a very, very valuable thing. But I think Nathan Eovaldi is just that much more valuable. With Nathan Eovaldi, what he has done in his career in the postseason, the kind of impact that he has on young starters, developing young starters, I think that his reputation around the league is incredibly solid. I mean, seeing what he did leading that Rangers rotation to their first ever World Series, the big game Nate moniker is incredibly well earned. And just this year, leading the Rangers in innings pitched with 170 and 2/3. This was a good season for Eovaldi. Down the stretch, it was not as great. He kind of faltered a little bit, but 29 starts this season, a 3.80 ERA, that's solid. That is a solid starting pitcher with that kind of a track record when it matters most. I think that extra value is going to make him that much more intriguing to other teams that are, trying to sign him. But different outlets had different opinions on whether Eovaldi or Kikuchi was going to be a more valuable free agent. Jake Mintz and Jordan Schusterman over at Yahoo had Kikuchi as their 17th ranked free agent in this class. He was behind Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, Jack Flaherty, Max Fried, Blake Snell, and Corbin Burns. So the 7th best pitcher. And they had Nathan Eovaldi right there with them as the 18th best free agent in this market, literally right behind Kikuchi. So Evo was the 8th best pitcher on this market. Now, Evo is a couple years older than Kikuchi, but the Athletic was reversed. They had Kikuchi as their 30th ranked free agent. They had Eovaldi as their 20th ranked free agent. And the Athletic had Eovaldi projected for 2 years, $42 million with a team option projected. Spotrac had Evo projected for 2 years, 49 mil, so around 25 million. But I think that this deal with Kikuchi, I'm not sure how the market feels about, Eovaldi. He is a little bit older. He does have more of a track record of an upside and, pitching well for the duration of an entire season, not just a 10-game stretch. And also, again, that playoff, moniker of the big game Nate, I think that adds a lot of value. I think the teams who are going to be in on Eovaldi, obviously the Rangers, are very much intent on bringing him back, would love to have him back. I think Eovaldi loves it here. I wouldn't be surprised if the Astros made a run at him. And him being an Alvin, Texas native, I would be absolutely furious if the Astros did end up signing Eovaldi. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're kicking the tires. The Dodgers always need starting pitching. And one team that I don't have any sourcing or anything on this, but I'm pretty sure the Orioles should be very, very high on Eovaldi with their young homegrown starting pitchers, the impact that Eovaldi could have there. They are probably going to make it to the playoffs again, at least be a wild card team, having that kind of veteran leadership after a very frustrating couple of first round exits or sweeps. They have not won a postseason game since, I believe, 2014 or maybe 2016. It's been a hot minute, even though they've had 2 great regular seasons the last couple of years. I think that he would make all the sense in the world with Baltimore. But if the Rangers want to keep him, they might have to add that 3rd year. And as for Eovaldi, what his kind of leverage is, I think that 3 years is going to be a pretty easy ask for him, saying, hey, look at that guy Kikuchi. 10 good starts for him. That gets him a 3rd year and $20 million, $21 million average annual value. I think it would be very easy for him to say, yeah, no, I'm better than that guy. you should be paying me more than that guy. I have a longer track record of success. Granted, not as long a track record of being healthy, but I wouldn't be surprised if the kind of deal that Eovaldi is looking for, if it looks something like what Sonny Gray signed with the Cardinals before the 2024 season. Sonny Gray signed a 3-year, $75 million deal with St. Louis before last season, did miss a decent chunk of time in 2024. The Cardinals missed out on the playoffs, and I think they just barely had a winning record. Just a very disappointing season for the Cardinals, but averaging $25 million over the 3-year term. So 3 years, $75 million for Sonny Gray. And there's also a club option for 2027 for $30 million. So could be as high as 4 years, $105 million. But one of the interesting things about Sonny Gray's contract that I think the Rangers might mimic, Gray was a year younger than Eovaldi when he signed that deal. So he was heading into his age 34 season before it, and Eovaldi will be heading into his age 35 season. Sonny Gray has a little bit more of a track record of success in the regular season, whereas Nathan Eovaldi, doesn't quite have as much regular season success as Sonny Gray has had the last couple of seasons. But the one thing that I found really interesting about this contract that you don't usually see is a deal that starts getting more expensive as he gets older. The way that it's structured with St. Louis, of trying to appease that cash early on, which could make sense for the Rangers with the questions about what exactly they're going to bring in with their TV deal. And they're hoping and thinking that everything will be more solid and sorted, later on. But the first year of that deal, it's backloaded for a pitcher for his age 34, 35, and 36 seasons. That was something that surprised me looking more into this contract, because this year in 2024, Sonny Gray made $10 million. Next year, 2025, he's going to make $25 million. And then the last year of that deal, he'll make $35 million. Granted, it all counts the same each year against the luxury tax, which, again, is probably the Rangers' main concern. But making that more expensive as it goes on, and then a $30 million club option for his age 37 season, I thought that was fairly interesting. I don't see Evo getting 3 years with an option for a 4th year. I think that would be maybe overplaying his market. I don't see that necessarily being the case, but 3 years, maybe with a player option for that 3rd year, I would not be surprised to see Nathan Eovaldi sign a deal like that. If it's around $20 to $25 million annually, I think that's about what we'd be looking at, about what Eovaldi would be looking at. Because the deal that he signed with Texas before that 2023 season, I thought it was a bit much. I didn't really understand it at the time, but oh my God, what a brilliant move by Chris Young to bring in Eovaldi as that basically last piece to a championship roster in 2023. I just did not get it. I did not see it. And with all those incentives, the deal was 2 years, $34 million as a baseline. 2 years, average of $17 million was the baseline. And then with the incentives, it ended up being a little bit more than that. But those incentives were absolutely worth it, every single bit, for Nathan Eovaldi. He had $1.5 million in bonuses in 2023, and then $3 million in bonuses in 2024. So he made $18.6 million actually in 2023, and then $20 million in 2024. One of those bonuses was also an All-Star appearance for him in 2023. He did not get the $100,000 bonus for an LCS MVP or a World Series MVP. I believe that was a $150,000 bonus if he won World Series MVP. Alas, that went to Corey Seager, but still absolutely worth it for Nathan Eovaldi, who I think is going to be, if not the Rangers' top priority in free agency, sitting there asking for the baseline of 3 years of what Kikuchi got of 3 years, $63 million. I would not be surprised if that's, the starting point for him, saying, hey, look at my track record, look at what I've done, look at who I am, the impact I have on organizations. Talk to anybody who has pitched with me, talk to some of the young guys in those organizations. Kumar Rocker, a week into being a teammate with Nathan Eovaldi, said, hey, yeah, this is the best teammate I've ever had. After a week, the Rangers' young star prospect the next great hope, the first great hope for a young Rangers developed starting pitcher that is good, not just suitable, but very good, potentially. Talking about the impact that Nathan Eovaldi had. I guarantee you his agent's going to point to that in his free agency meeting with the Rangers, saying, like, hey, see what this guy said after a week? Imagine what he'll be saying after a full year with me helping get in there and mentor him and show him the ropes of what it takes to be a successful starting pitcher in this league, something I have done for a long freaking time. And this is something that you are going to need on this roster. The Rangers are very much going to need. And it seems like it's going to take 3 years to get Eovaldi. But if the Rangers want to compete in 2025, in 2026, and 2027, there are very few starting pitchers I would want more on my roster than Nathan Eovaldi. Just a couple of last things before we go. We'll talk more about it on tomorrow's show, looking at these non-tendered players that the Rangers could end up going and getting in free agency, guys who I didn't think were going to be free agents. Just one last look at the former Rangers who have been non-tenured by different clubs. Former Ranger great Dylan Tate, non-tendered by Toronto. Patrick Wisdom of the Cubs. The Reds got Ian Jabot, and the Tigers with Ricky Vanasco. Some interesting names on this non-tendered free agent list that makes this class a little bit deeper and a little bit more interesting. The Rangers have some options. We'll talk about them on tomorrow's show. But thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.